Paul's very dedicated supporters.
Just think.
Thank you. You actually, you just wrote a book about the Fed. I mean, my God, tell us, off camera, you were telling me you think that Ben Bernanke probably deserves to be Person of the Year because of the power he has.
He is. He's the most powerful man in the world.
I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, the man that came out with the additional missing $21 trillion with the DOD and HUD. He is Dr. Mark Skidmore, professor of economics at Michigan State University, and you and your team put together using government data that's now been scrubbed from the internet, that you put together, and $21 missing trillion. You have been trying to get more clarification from the government, and you've gotten some stunning answers from the government. Well, let's talk about the $21 trillion of missing money in the DOD and HUD, Housing and Urban Development, Department of Defense, and then you have asked for more information. What do they give you in terms of explanation for where is this $21 trillion? Where did it go?
Well, first, Greg, thanks for having me on again. I thought it was time to have an update because we've had so many interesting things happen around this question of 21 trillion. And I really appreciated you having me on, what was it, last fall or last December, to talk about it. So let me just give a quick overview and update about what we did find. First, I had been listening to Catherine Austin Fitts, who had worked for HUD for a period, and she's an advocate for transparency and accountability within government, and she had referred to a report by the Office of the Inspector General that had been evaluating the finances of the Army for fiscal year 2015. And in that year, general fund authorized spending by Congress for the Army was $122 billion. And in this report, or in this interview that Catherine gave, she had indicated that the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General, said that there were $6.5 trillion in unsupported adjustments. And these are, what they amount to are transactions that they are not able to verify exactly what happened, whether they're internal or external. So 6.5 trillion is about 54 times 122 billion. And so I thought to myself, she must be wrong, because I know public budgeting pretty well. I don't understand how you could get adjustments, transactions that are unaccounted for in that amount. And so it sort of troubled me, and I decided to go on the OIG website myself. I found the report, I started reading it, and I was astounded. It really did say 6.5 trillion. I started reading the report, and even though the report was vague, you had a few little things you could cling to, and during the interview I talked about some of those. For example, the report says there were 170 adjustments amounting to $2.1 trillion. That's just 170 transactions, according to the report, that amounted to a sum greater than the GDP of India. And so I've been asking the Office of the Inspector General for information about that. Please send me an addendum. I've talked with the Office of Management and Budget, I've talked with the GAO, but nobody is in a position to offer any kind of detail or feedback. I have talked to some legislators or the offices of legislators, and I haven't been able to get through on that. So anyway, as a result of that inquiry, I was just troubled, and so I decided to contact Fitts and suggest that we work together, and I would ask some of my graduate students to spend some time through the summer of, 2017, and just see if we could find other similar reports where the amounts of the unsupported adjustments were highlighted. There are many reports, but not all of them for the public consumption indicates the magnitude of the adjustments that the OIG says, well, we just can't verify that these are legitimate.
Well, let's fast forward here, and because let's just go to your $21 trillion number.
Yeah.
So you go, and there's no dispute here. You go to the government, and they tell you, here is what we're going to give you an answer for, and they give you page after page of black redacted stuff. And then they change the accounting according to the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board, where they can modify reports if it's a national security issue. So they didn't tell you you're crazy, you did it wrong. You and your students didn't come up with the right amount of money in DOD and HUD. They just said it's a national security issue. They basically confirmed the $21 trillion. Did they not? Isn't that a confirmation that you were correct?
Yeah, so let me just lay out the sequence of events. And so what I was going to, for anybody who hadn't seen the previous interview, or I wanted to give that context. But shortly after we did that first interview, highlighting the sum of this 21 trillion between 1998 and 2015, fiscal year 2015, we found $21 trillion of unaccounted for, unsupported, they call them unsupported adjustments. And so we asked some questions. We did this interview with you. We posted all of this information. You can get that information on Solari.com, missingmoney.solari.com, and you can look at the reports yourself and find, the amounts. We have the page number, etc.
And hold on, let me get in here. Solari, that's the only place you can find them is Solari.com. They scrubbed them off the internet. So you guys downloaded the reports.
Yeah, so we downloaded the reports. That was a suggestion that Catherine gave, and I'm really glad we did that.
Yeah.
But I will say they did remove the reports for a period, and then they put them back on under a new URL. So they are available now. A few days after we gave the interview, there was a big announcement that the DoD was going to conduct its first ever independent audit, and that has been ongoing. And then in the spring, that was early this year, in January, they announced that. And then in spring, a graduate student said, I found another report for fiscal year 2017. I think that this is a similar report, but look at this. And as it turns out, all of the information, any numbers or figures related to unsupported adjustments had been redacted. So now you can't ask a question because it's all blanked out, apparently because it's a national security issue.
He can create $1 trillion in secret without any monitoring of the Congress. So there's no transparency, and I think he's more powerful than a president.
We need to get Dr. Paul's back. We need to redraft Dr. Paul. We need Mr. President 45 to step forward and take down this ridiculous leadership that we are witnessing coming out of Washington and this incredible spending. Love you guys. The Debt Assassins out. And every day is a day to kick the elitist butt. And that's what I'm doing.
And the real danger, if we continue to do this, is the default through the devaluation of the currency, and that's translated into paying for it through higher prices. I think that's going to be chaotic because we just can't keep up. I think it'll force us to have a change in foreign policy and spending policies here at home. But I think you have to go through a rough time.
So then you get the argument, well, this is not a stimulus bill, this is a spending bill. What do you think a stimulus is? That's the whole point. No, seriously.
If there were no Federal Reserve, there may have been no need for an income tax. The country did fine without it for 137 years. The income tax amendment was introduced the same year the Federal Reserve System was formed, 1913.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, so help me God. must act quickly. I shall ask the Congress for the one remaining instrument to meet the President. Broad executive power.
Everybody likes fight for president. Hang out the banners, beat the drum. We'll take back to Washington.
The New Deal and the Fair Deal were bold measures for their generation. But now this is a new generation. And we stand today on the edge of a new frontier.
The Great Society asked not how much, but how good. Not only how to create wealth, but how to use it. Not only how fast we're going, but where we're headed.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
I believe it is clear our federal government is overgrown and overweight. Indeed, it is time our government should go on a diet.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Read my lips. No new action.
The era of big government is over.
free market system.
Bottom line is that this is not an issue of salesmanship to the American people. The American people are sold. The American people are sold. I just want to repeat this.
The political debate would have been different. You had Republican support on it. On Coburn, you had Republican senators signed on it.
Judge, you have 80% of the American people who support a balanced approach.
In the 80s, they did it to Reagan. A debt ceiling compromise. Democrats promising spending cuts, but delivering only tax hikes. The 90s brought more compromises, more broken promises, $14 trillion in debt, millions unemployed, the dollar in decline. We know where they stand. But will our party's leaders repeat the mistakes of the past? Will they choose compromise or conviction? One candidate has always been true. Ron Paul. Cut spending, balance the budget, no deals. Standing up to the Washington machine.
Destroy them.
We're going down today.
First engineering, get us out of here. Ready? Do it! That's it. Let's go. The future's
The bottom line is that this is not an issue of salesmanship to the American people. The American people are sold. The American people are sold. I just want to repeat it.
We have reached a landmark settlement with the nation's largest banks.
For America Now. This August, the next chapter will be written.
The last decade. It's quite likely he would simply restate the Orwellian definition of totalitarianism, to wit, a society living by and for continuous warfare, in which the ruling caste have ceased to have any real function but succeed in claiming to power through force and fraud, and then ask whether this sounds like the world we live in. Because it ought to be obvious by now that our seemingly endless economic recessions are being deliberately orchestrated. In today's world, the commodities markets are arranged in such a way that the price of virtually everything, particularly food, hardly ever changes. So how then can it be that the price of oil increased tenfold in the last decade? Economists are now tacitly agreeing that this was due to financialization, which is just a fancy way of saying rich creeps like the Bush family and their merchant banking friends used their trillionaire fortunes to rig the market.
You blocked me on Facebook, and now you're going to die.
The others don't want to talk about it because it scares them.
Have a good night, guys. You see it, baby. They don't lie.
Let's go.
They don't lie. They don't lie. They don't lie, tough guy.
This is the day when the world declared in one voice
we have reached a landmark settlement with the nation's largest bank.
We now are a nation known to start war. We feel compelled because of our insecurity that we have to go over and attack these countries to maintain our empire. We have over 700 bases. We're in 130 countries, and they're talking about bombing Iran. It is such a dramatic change from what is truly American and truly constitutional.
If no one ever challenged the status quo,
does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Are you a part of the debt matrix? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Are you just a part of the debt matrix?
You thought you could, but you couldn't. And you thought you could step to B, but you know you shouldn't. So let me be most prudent. Thought you could be, they would get your back, but they wouldn't, so now you know better. Got some strange, even met a bedwetter, but as we move forward in 2013, you know DejaB's been on this mic since the age of the Byzantine. They are always keeping DejaB quiet, away from the masses, Poindexter and glasses, ain't he a riot? But my weapon is research, you have to know where you've been to know where you're going. Can't believe she's pregnant, she's isn't even showing, but if you don't study hard, you're gonna find yourself running up a big hill saying, yes sir, Sarge.
Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt, are you a part of that debt? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Are you just a part of the debt matrix?
if no one ever challenged the status quo,
So now that you know the choice is between love or fear, which way you gonna go? Are you gonna sit back and let others in suits dictate your future cause they own you like roots? Are you gonna snap out of it? Say enough's enough of shoveling their manure, and those whom think of you as just some loser. I'd get away from that crew, P. Become a debt assassin and join us in the fight against slavery reality. This debt thing is bullshit, you just heard it here from DejaB. Seems we've got enough to food to feed the world twice over, but not even enough love to fill up a bulldozer. But if you give the situation more than a once over, you'll see money doesn't exist in nature. That lie is just a matrix.
Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Are you just a part of the debt matrix? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Does the debt matrix have you? Are you just a part of the debt matrix? Just another break in the wall. Debt matrix, another break. Just another brick in the wall. Debt matrix, are you just another part of the debt matrix?
I don't want to run the world. The Constitution doesn't give me the authority to run the world. We ought to mind our own business is what we need to do. With all this spending overseas, wasted money. Spread the message. Thank you.
If no one ever challenged the status quo,